Hey guys, it's Jeff. Today I'm going to be reviewing and discussing a book called The Inferno by Dante, commonly known as Dante's Inferno. It was written in the 14th century, so the 1300s, which was a really long time ago. And it's hard to say how many pages this book has because my version almost seems like a school version, not like, like simplified or anything like that, but has a lot of extra, information in it. So like, for example, at the beginning, it has an introduction that gives kind of a background about Dante Alighieri, and like kind of some of his background info, and it kind of sets up the stage for, the time period, I guess, in which it was written. I didn't personally read that because I didn't really feel like it. I just wanted to get straight to the story. But what I did really like about this version is that at the beginning of each chapter or canto, at the top there, Canto 1, it has these like italic words, which is basically summarizing what's going to happen within that chapter. And the chapters they're relatively short, so you can get through them pretty quickly. Like this first one is really only like two or three pages long, but there's a lot of content in each chapters. They vary in differing lengths. But that intro and that summary at the beginning actually really helped me out because I remember trying to get into this book a few years ago, and it's not like the language now that I went through it and read it and understood like the flow of how it read. It wasn't as hard as I remember it being, but when I first started it, I couldn't really get into it as quickly as I did this time. So that summary really helped out because I read the summary and then I could kind of pick out, okay, I remember that from the summary and I remember that from the summary. So it kind of just, for me, it helped move me forward in understanding what was happening, because some of the language can be a little unclear. It's not like he uses big words or anything like that, but it's an older time, so people don't really write books or speak like this anymore. So that really helped. And on the sides here, you can't really see it because they're really small, but on the sides it shows like a line number. So line 3, line 6, line 9. At the very end of each chapter, there's a notes section, and it literally goes over almost line by line what he's referencing, because a lot of the things in this book that he references are from his time period, and those extra notes at the end give even more context of the people that he encounters when he goes through hell or the Inferno. And who these people are and what was happening in different cities at that time. And I didn't really go through the notes myself. I just kind of wanted to experience the story. Maybe I'll go back if I want to learn more about it, but you don't really need to read the notes in order to fully enjoy the story. But this version, this Penguin's Classic version, would be perfect for someone who's maybe studying it in school and wanted to learn, needed more like a more in-depth analysis of it in order to understand it. Which I wanted to read it because I actually never had to, read this in school or learn about it really at all. So I was interested in learning more about it, and recently read a few books that, I didn't have to read in school, that I missed out on that are great. And what I didn't know, actually, I thought that this book was a standalone book all by itself. So when people talk about Dante's Inferno, I thought it was just a standalone, but it's actually not. It's part of there's 3 books in the series. So this first one is Inferno, which follows the main character, the Pilgrim, through hell and then his journey continues into purgatory. So book 2 is called Purgatorio, and then the third book is Paradise, Paradiso. So that's like heaven. So his journey from hell into purgatory, and then finally into heaven, which I didn't know existed until I picked this book up and started reading just more about it. So it follows the Pilgrim, who's the main character. He's in the middle of a forest when he wakes up. He has no idea how he got there, and he wakes up and he feels really strange, very confused as to how what happened to lead him here. He starts traveling through the forest, tries to get out, but comes across I think it was some kind of like dog or wolf or something from hell. It was on a hilltop, and he was trying to get up the hill, and this dog, not like a normal sized dog, but this huge beast, was basically blocking his path to exit these woods. He's then approached by a character named Virgil, who is a spirit from hell, but who is there to guide him through hell, in order for him to get past this creature. Now, Virgil isn't a demonic spirit. He's basically from the place in hell that is reserved for people who just didn't believe in God. They didn't really do anything wrong in their life. They led, a pretty much normal life, but just couldn't accept God as their savior, as their deity. So, it's reserved for like philosophers, people like, like Aristotle and like Plato. And so when the Pilgrim is first guided by Virgil through his part of hell, it almost seems just like a normal living situation like we would live in the real world, except that, you can never be like fully happy or fully satisfied with, God's happiness that you would have experienced if you were in heaven. So they're not really being tortured. They're just not living with God. And so it's reserved for those people who just couldn't accept God as being real. So Virgil says, just kind of appears out of nowhere and says, I'm here to guide you. Basically, God sent me to guide you through hell to get you out of here so that we can continue your journey, upwards. But it's not exactly clear why, God is doing that. Does he do that for every single person that this happens to? Why is the Pilgrim lost all of a sudden? That's never really explained in this book, which it might be in later books. I haven't read the other two yet, so maybe they explain that. But we're never really sure. We're never really sure if the Pilgrim actually died or not. And every indication points towards the fact that he's actually not dead, that he is in fact alive, because when he goes through certain circles of hell, and he gets noticed by these demons and spirits, they're looking at him like, what are you doing here? And even the other people who are being tortured, like other humans that are being tortured for the crimes that they've committed, they're looking at him like, if you're still alive, they don't say alive, but like, why are you here? They can kind of sense that he's not dead yet. And that's never really explained, why God might be, picking him out and guiding him. Although, if he wants him to be in heaven, then he's probably going to go out of his way to do that. But Virgil never really says like, yeah, I've done this so many times with certain people, and, you're one of many, or you're special. It's just it kind of just throws you in there. So it's a little unclear about that. But, as a form of like imagery, and the story that this book brings up is fantastic. It's very creepy, going through the different levels of hell and the types of torture that all of these souls are experiencing, and it just makes you like, man, I do not want to experience that. Like some of them are one of the levels that they encounter is like people who are forced to walk on sand, like hot sand, for the rest of eternity, basically. And the level of crime you committed depends on how much you're being tortured within that circle and how far down in hell you are. So the higher levels are reserved for people like, Virgil and like those philosophers that didn't really do anything wrong. They just couldn't accept God. So they're not really being tortured. They just live without God. And as you descend lower into hell, the torturing becomes more intense. And even within those own levels, the level of torture becomes more intense. So someone who is forced to be walking around this desert for eternity on hot sand, someone who might have committed like a crime that's not as serious as some of the other people in there might just be forced to walk on it with bare feet. Whereas someone who committed a more serious crime would be like on their knees and on their hands and knees walking around. So like those, feet are sensitive skin, but when you're forced to like crawl around on your hands, they're just being pushed down by this force, and they can never get up. So they're always going to be on their hands and knees, and people who are, dragging themselves across the ground. So within each circle, there's also varying levels of pain that these characters have to go through. Another one is like a windstorm where they can never see. They're always they're forced to walk in a circle, and they're always being like wind and rain, almost like a hurricane type of winds, are always being pushed at them, and they can never really see what's going in front of them, and they're always being like whipped around by the hurt of like cold rain and winds. Some people are forced to, for example, like walk around with their heads on backwards. So their bodies are walking forward, but their head is facing that way because of, they tried to see the future, and, rather than like living in their life now, they tried to, like trick people into, like fortune tellers or something, like, trick people into telling their fortune when they were obviously being deceitful. So things like that, where you'd see like, disfigurement or people getting like ripped apart by demons, and some of the characters that are in hell are trying to like outsmart these demons by oh yeah, let me, like there's one where this character is being boiled by like hot oil or hot tar or something like that. It's like a big pool. It's all bubbly, and he's forced to come up to explain himself to Virgil, because Virgil's explaining like, oh, this guy did this as he's guiding the pilgrim around. And the guy pops up and he says, you know what, wait, don't eat me, or don't like tear my arm off, because I'll give you my friend that's, that's down here. You'll want him more. So as he's like standing up there with Virgil, the demons are like, all right, I guess we'll believe you. And then he jumps off the ledge real quick, and they're like, you got us, like, so there's this, that kind of made me laugh, because there's these demons that are trying to always trick these characters into getting tortured, but then the characters play the game as well. So they know that like, hey, let me give you my friend because you'll want him more. He's more valuable. So they trick the demons in turn, and then the demons get all angry and they're fooled. So that was kind of funny. What else? Let's see. There's about like 30 chapters. It's all in Roman numerals. So about 33. I just did a quick little skim through. And yeah, they're incredibly descriptive as short as they are. And I thought I pulled this up on the computer here, just kind of go through like the different, because not every chapter is like a different circle. I think there's like 9 circles, but there's 30 chapters. So it's not like every chapter he's going through a new circle. It's just like a new. Sometimes it's subdivided. So like just on Wikipedia here, the first circle is limbo, second circle is lust. So everybody who just tried to live a life of lustfulness, is being punished. Gluttony, greed, people who were tricking other people into giving them money or stealing got punished. Wrath, heresy, violence, people who are like murderers and stuff like that. Fraud, who try to deceive people. And then ninth circle is treachery, and then after that is the center. So there's 9 circles. And I really did enjoy this book. I'm glad that I continued forward with it. Although there were some problems that I had with it. The first problem is that each time that Virgil brings the Pilgrim into a new circle or a new level of that circle, the Pilgrim seems to automatically recognize someone in that circle right as they walk up. So when they pass one, he'll lead him down and he says, "Oh, that guy over there, I recognize him. He's like this guy, this leader from like Greece or something like that, or he was like a local like governor, like equivalent of a governor or something like that led over all these people. Oh, I wonder what he's down here for." And it happens a lot. It happens a lot where he enters a new circle and just automatically recognizes someone and asks Virgil, "What did that guy do?" And I didn't really find that completely believable, because at one point, like the desert storm that I had mentioned earlier, where people had to crawl on their hands and knees on the burning sand, it was described as having like a 20-mile or 22-mile, it was either diameter or like circumference, I can't remember which one, but just say 22-mile like diameter, I guess. So, 22 miles this way, and then a circle, completely around that. So imagine how big of a circle people are walking around. It's just like a giant line of people walking around in this circle, and they just happen to walk up, and he just happens to recognize someone like every single time he gets into a circle. And it was kind of just like, that kind of got old a little bit. I thought it would be more believable if Virgil was the one to point these people out, because like that was back in a time when there were no photographs. I mean, there may have been paintings or something like that, but even in like our time right now, there's videos and photographs, and I can't recognize someone if I've seen just like one photograph of them or something. So in a time period of like that this is set in, where photos didn't exist, and he just happens to, somehow know who these people are, it just felt a little weird to me. I kind of wanted Virgil to be the one. Okay, now look over there. This guy over here, he was like your leader, or like this person in your town that did this, did this to him, and that happens like many times where Virgil's like, "Oh yeah, I remember meeting you in my life." Like they would go through one where like people were being like hung upside down in like a hot pit or something like that, and their feet were sticking up, and he was like talking to these people as they're upside down, and he knew some of like in his own life he's come across these people and talked to them. So it's not really clear whether like, and I don't know why this would be the case, but whether like his journey was like customized for his life, where each person, that if this happens to multiple people, that if Virgil guides each person through their own custom like journey through hell, where they all do, experience people that they've come across in their life. It's never mentioned like that, and I don't know why it would be like that. But I wish there was a little bit more explanation, or a little bit more believability, if that's even a word, for that. The second one is Dante is like mixing Greek mythology, it seems, with like Christian worldviews. So many times Dante references Jesus, God, Satan, which is, that's like a Christian worldview. But but when the pilgrim is going through all these circles, he's recognizing figures from like Greek mythology, which is like, Paris, Helen, and Achilles, and they've got their own like complete separate gods that they believe in, like Ares, the god of war, and Zeus, and Aphrodite, and all these people that they're just two different branches of deities. And it felt, it was cool to see them, I guess, but it felt weird to be referencing, Achilles and Paris and Helen, but then and then the next sentence say, Jesus came down here and, talked to these people. It just felt kind of weird. Although, so then number 3 is, I didn't really feel like the pilgrim could actually be hurt in hell. Like Virgil is protecting him throughout his journey. Stay behind me because this demon is coming to charge at us. So if it was like God's intention to have Virgil, it is God's intention or Jesus's intention to have Virgil guiding the pilgrim through hell so that they can bring him up to heaven. But why would they at all be in danger of these creatures if it was God's plan to put him through there? I never felt like he was really in danger, and like, would God really allow him to get hurt? I'm not sure, and it's like, it's the afterlife. So characters who are, let's say, getting their arms ripped off, they're like eternally getting their arms ripped off. So it's like they get their arm ripped off and then like it'll like either grow back or they'll get it back somehow, and then it gets ripped off again. So it's not like you can die in the afterlife in this book. So you could just get tortured for a really long time or like eternity basically. But I never really felt like the pilgrim or Virgil were actually in danger because it is the afterlife and they're trying to get the pilgrim to heaven. And you would think that if God actually wanted that to happen, then he would do everything that he could, I almost felt like Pilgrim was only just a spectator rather than him actually getting hurt. And the biggest problem that I had with this book, and it actually made me drop my review points, like, 2 out of 5, 3 out of 5, it made me drop a whole point because of this one thing that I had a problem with. So you would think that, as you're going through the different levels of hell, he's talking through all these, he's talking to all these spirits and all these different demons. Like he'll go up to this demon and say, like, tell me what you're doing here, or tell me like what you're doing to these people when you're torturing them. And the pilgrim, I'm sorry, maybe I didn't mention that. The pilgrim will ask these demons, why are you here? What are you doing to these people? And then the pilgrim will also ask these people who are being tortured, why were you here? What are you being tortured for? Even though, Virgil could have told him that probably. Virgil seems to know everything about, everyone in these circles. But, so the pilgrim is asking just regular people, what did you do here? And then some of these people are like, no, like, who are you? I'm not going to tell you. Why would I tell you who are you to ask me like why I'm being tortured? I'm going to be here for eternity. Just let me get through it, So he's talking to all these people that don't matter, who are not really important figures, but are just victims of being in hell. But that's not the problem. That's kind of leading up to what my problem is with it. So here's what my biggest problem is. You would think that the big payoff of getting through all the circle, at least for us, for the reader, reading about the pilgrim's journey through all these circles of hell, descending lower and lower in order to get out, you would think that the big payoff is that he gets to talk to Satan and that you get to see Satan. You do get to see Satan, but the pilgrim never speaks to him. He never has a conversation with the king of the underworld, the king of hell. And that's what, like, I was reading that, and it kind of pissed me off a little bit. Well, it did piss me off, because I'm reading through this entire book, and the reason why I mentioned him speaking to all those demons and all those, those people that are being tortured, it's like, in the grand scheme of things, like, he's asking this person, why are you being tortured? And he's asking this demon, what are you doing here? And what did this person do to deserve this? He's asking those demons about why they're here. But when he gets to the lowest circle and he sees Satan in the distance, they don't make any attempt to go and speak to him. Virgil never says, let's go talk to Satan and see what he has to say about ruling hell and about the people that he's torturing. Because when you see Satan, he's he's chewing on Judas and two other characters that I'm not familiar with, Ulysses, and then there's like a third guy that I can't think of his name at the moment. So he's forever like eating these three characters because they've committed, the worst sins out of anybody. But when they get to the lowest circle, they actually climb down Satan's leg to get even lower into hell in order to get out. So they're touching the guy, and he never once says, what do you think about ruling hell? What do you think about all these other people that are being tortured? Like, why are you tasked with like eating these specific people? And it comes with almost like you kind of have to know who these people are before you even read the book, because you're supposed to know like why they would have been in hell in the first place. Even though some of these other characters are explained, here's what this guy did to deserve this type of punishment, you're supposed to assume that you know who like Judas is and Ulysses and that third guy. So like I could not believe that Dante didn't initiate, the writer Dante didn't initiate some kind of conversation between the pilgrim, Virgil, and Satan. And I was so disappointed in that. And I doubt that they would go back and revisit that in the other books like Purgatory and Paradise. That's like reading the Paradise book and then him never speaking to God. Isn't that supposed to be the big payoff? That's like supposed to be the climax of the book is like speaking to him, right? At least in my opinion. So I found that incredibly disappointing. And, I read this a few months ago before I started this channel, and now as I'm, revisiting it, this book would have had a 5 out of 5 for me, but I have to give it a 4 out of 5. And the reason that it got a 4, those other problems that I brought up about, the pilgrim recognizing all the people in each circle, and then the Greek mythology thing, and then can he really get hurt? Those are kind of just, those aren't big enough problems for me to, knock it a point down. It's just like strange observations. But this one problem that I had made me knock it down a whole point from a 5 to a 4, because I really wish that he would have initiated some type of conversation with him. So overall, what it does really well is its imagery. The language, you kind of have to get used to. It took me when I fully read it, that was the second time that I picked it up. So it might take you maybe 1 or 2 tries to pick it up. I know it did for me, a few years apart. But once you get into it, it's completely worth it. So what it does well is imagery, the story, and you just get this general sense of like creepiness. What it doesn't do well is the Satan thing, and then just those minor things that I mentioned before. So I definitely think that you should pick this book up if you haven't read it for school or anything like that. Try to find. I think it's if you can find a version like this where it has all this extra info in it. I really think that that's the type of version that you should go for, because that really helped me. Not all the not the introduction and the notes, but if you're someone that wants to learn more about the situation that Dante was in when he wrote it, and just the world that these people are in, that's completely worth it. And for me, at least, the summary at the beginning of each chapter really helped me understand and have it flow a little better when I was reading it. 4 out of 5. Let me know if you've enjoyed this book, if you agree with me on those things that I didn't like about it, if you would have given it a different score. Go ahead and subscribe, like, or dislike this video if you want, and I'll see you in the next one.